Good day. This is the figure of Martin Teimer. So, who was Martin Teimer and what was his involvement in the Tyrolean revolt of 1809? Well, without Martin Teimer, the revolt may not have happened at all. Actually, certainly not in the way that it did. He played a very important part. More so than Andreas Hofer, I think, or any of the other leaders actually. So well done to Piano Wargames for making a figure of him. Right. Teimer is sometimes spelt T-H-E-I-M-E-R. So Martin Teimer was born in the town of Cilandro in the southern Tyrol, which today is in Italy. I won't mention too much about that. Bit of sore point since 1916. He came from a reasonably well-off family. He was well educated and decided to study law in Innsbruck, which is the capital of the Tyrol. That was in 1796. Now if you travel from Cilandro to Innsbruck, you happen to pass right by the front door of a certain Andreas Hofer's inn, which is still there today. There's a lovely little museum attached to it as well, so well worth a visit. But anyway, I'm off track. Right. Where was I? Yeah, so he was studying law in 1796. Right, in 1797, with the French having invaded the Tyrol, he decided to join one of the many Schützen companies which still exist in the Tyrol today. That was the Maser Schützen Company. He did see a little action in 1796, and in 1799, and the French invaded again, he was appointed captain of his own Schützen Company, the Bolzano Company, and he was actually decorated for his bravery. In 1805, I'm not sure exactly what his role was because of course war broke out again. I'm pretty sure he may have seen some action again. But of course after the campaign, Napoleon decided to reward Bavaria for their support and gave Bavaria control over the Tyrol. In 1806, he moved to Klagenfurt, which is in Carinthia, which is it's the capital of Carinthia. Yeah, lovely little town. He took up a leading role in a tobacco company, which meant, of course, that he was able to travel around the Tyrol. Remember, it was under Bavarian rule now. So a year later, in 1807, Archduke Johann, or Archduke John, I call him Archduke John. In 1807, he was looking for somebody who was well connected, was well educated, and somebody who was able to travel around the Tyrol without arousing suspicion from the Bavarian authorities. And of course, Martin Teimer fitted that role perfectly. So Archduke visited Teimer in Klagenfurt, and he asked him if he would be willing to organise people around the Tyrol for a general uprising, which he agreed to do. And one of those people, of course, would be Andreas Hofer. Andreas Hofer, owning an inn, was a perfect place to meet and organise the uprising. Now, that was in 1807, remember, that was a good 18 months before the 1809 campaign began. So it was certainly well organised. Right, so we jump to the 1809 campaign. So by 1809, Andreas Hofer and Martin Teimer had organised and called for an open order uprising of all the Tyrolean militia captains, and this was arranged for the 9th of April 1809. Now, after the outbreak of hostilities, Teimer took command in the North Tyrol and also around the area of his hometown of Salandre. He took part in the first battle of Bergisel as a captain of the Tyrolean riflemen, and along with Andreas Hofer on the 12th of April liberated Innsbruck, forced the Bavarians out of Innsbruck. And a day later, on the 13th of April, the French troops, these French troops, they were reinforcement troops. They were on the way from northern Italy to join Napoleon's main army along the Danube valley. Many of them would have been conscripts. There were some regular troops among them. There were some dragoons. They numbered about between 4,000 and 6,000, possibly more. As far as I can find out, there's no artillery with them. They wouldn't have taken the artillery over the mountains, so it's very doubtful there was artillery. They were commanded by General Bisson, and once he'd heard that the Bavarians had been forced out of Innsbruck, he decided to march on Innsbruck as fast as he possibly could. Now Martin Teimer knew they were coming, and he found the uniform of a retired Austrian staff officer. Now, I don't know where he got the uniform or who gave him the uniform, but the uniform was too big for him. If you actually look on the figure, I don't know if it probably won't show up on the camera very well. Probably not, but you can see that the uniform is is too big for him. Now this was a uniform of a retired staff officer, and Martin Teimer was only 30 years old in 1809. So had General Bisson realised, had known his Austrian uniforms, he would have realised it was a uniform of a retired officer. But obviously he didn't. So Martin Teimer arranged to meet with General Bisson to arrange surrender. Now Bisson naturally assumed that the Tyroleans wanted to surrender to him, because obviously he's 6,000 plus men outnumbered the Tyroleans. So Bisson agreed to meet just outside of Innsbruck, just south of Innsbruck, Now Teimer, because they arrange a certain time to meet, so Teimer arranged to have cannon fired at a certain time. These cannon were probably captured Bavarian cannons. So during the meeting, the cannons were fired, and Bisson could hear these cannons firing. And Teimer informed Bisson that there was a whole a whole Austrian division marching on Innsbruck, and that it would be best for Bisson if he was to lay down arms, because his men would be slaughtered. You know, a whole Austrian division, that could be, what, 20,000 men. So Bisson agreed to the surrender, and as a reward for this, the Emperor Franz made Teimer a major. So he really did become an officer in the Austrian army. So now we jump to the second battle of Bergisel. So for the second battle of Bergisel, this was fought in May in 1809. Teimer again took command as a captain again. Now this battle, the Tyroleans were facing a whole Bavarian division. This was under General de Roy. So they weren't going to have it quite as easy as the first battle of Bergisel. In fact, the battle, although it was considered a Bavarian victory, was really a draw. There was no real outcome to the battle. The Tyroleans simply withdrew at the end of the day. But the Tyroleans became quite disheartened. Now they were up against a much larger force. So Teimer decided to take the fight into Bavaria itself. And he organised raids into Bavaria, mainly to get supplies, because remember that Tyrol was very poor at this time, and they were suffering. So he did several raids into Bavaria, which, if you're wargaming, would make some great scenarios, and you can also field some Bavarian militia landwehr, which would be something different. So now Andreas Hofer didn't agree with what Teimer was doing. Hofer was fine with defending his homeland, but he didn't want to take the fight into Bavaria. And they basically fell out over it, I guess you could say. They were never on good terms after that. So, as you probably know, that things didn't go well for the Austrian main army fighting against Napoleon at the Battle of Wagram. And after this, the Austrian forces, regular forces, withdrew from the Tyrol. So the Tyrol was basically lost to Bavaria. Now Teimer, because he was now made a major in the Austrian army, he had a decision to make. Did he follow the Austrian regular forces, or did he stay in the Tyrol and may well have been considered a deserter from the Austrian army? Well, he made the decision after the Austrian forces had left the Tyrol and peace was made with Austria, between the French and Austria. He decided to leave in July 1809, and he didn't take any further part in the actions in the Tyrol, because the Tyrolean revolt continued after July. So yes, he didn't take any further part, but in 1810 he was awarded the military order of Maria Theresa. Which would have been given to Andreas Hofer as well. So he became nobility, he became a baron, and took the title von Wilden. So he became Martin Teimer von Wilden. The rest of his life he moved to Styria and had a military grant, was awarded, and he even became a military advisor to Archduke John. He died in 1838 and is buried not far from Wilden. He had 4 daughters. There is a monument to him in his hometown town of Cilandro. And yeah, that was Martin Teimer. I think the reason he's not celebrated in the same way as Andreas Hofer is because people thought that he had deserted the Tyrol when he left in July, because the fighting went on for the rest of the year. And also because he'd been awarded the military order, they probably thought that he didn't deserve that. But it would have been the same order would have been given to Andreas Hofer if he'd survived. Yeah, as I say, he played a major part in the Tyrolean revolt. So that is Martin Teimer, and thank you for listening.